Welcome to ListLab. Before we start, a quick note about this video. This is a long-form compilation created from some of the channel's previous history and mystery videos, brought together into one extended documentary. That means you may hear countdown numbers like number 10 and short introductions at the start of some sections, as each part originally came from a separate ListLab episode. We have combined them here for a longer, more immersive viewing experience. If you enjoy ancient mysteries, lost civilizations, and strange artifacts, please subscribe for more from ListLab. Welcome to ListLab. Today, we are counting down 10 ancient artifacts and discoveries that suggest civilization, symbolic culture, and complex human society may be older than traditionally believed. The central question is this: do these ancient discoveries really push back the timeline of civilization, or later interpretations stretching the evidence too far? Subscribe for more calm investigations into ancient history, lost civilizations, and archaeological mysteries. Then tell me in the comments which entry most challenges the accepted story of the ancient world. Number 10. Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan, divers reported an underwater formation in 1986 that looks like broad terraces, sharp steps, and flat platforms. It attracted attention because its geometry can appear architectural, especially in photographs and underwater footage, where it resembles the ruins of a lost civilization. Marine geologist Masaaki Kimura has argued that parts of the site were shaped by people and may belong to a submerged settlement from a time when sea levels were lower. Some supporters go further. They suggest that mainstream archaeology avoids the site because it could point to a coastal civilization far older than accepted history. The strongest alternative explanation is geological. Other researchers argue that sandstone can break along natural plains and create straight edges without human work. Even researchers open to human involvement admit that direct archaeological evidence, such as tools, inscriptions, or clearly cut stone blocks, is still limited. What is clear is that a real underwater formation exists, and that specialists disagree about what created it. What remains uncertain is whether Yonaguni is a natural monument, a partly modified landscape, or genuine evidence of an ancient submerged culture. Number 9. Gunung Padang. Gunung Padang in West Java, Indonesia, is a terraced hilltop site built from volcanic stone columns and long regarded as an important ancient place. It gained worldwide attention after a paper published on October 20, 2023, claimed that the site concealed a buried pyramid with construction phases reaching back tens of thousands of years. That claim drew intense interest because it would place monumental building deep in the Ice Age and suggests that advanced culture existed far earlier than the standard timeline of civilization allows. Supporters argued that deep layers beneath the terraces show deliberate shaping. Some treated later criticism as an attempt to dismiss a discovery that could rewrite ancient history. Critics responded that the dating relied on soil samples not securely tied to human construction, which makes the extreme age claims unreliable. On March 18, 2024, the paper was formally retracted because of those dating concerns and the lack of a dependable association with artifacts. What is confirmed is that Gunung Padang is a genuine megalithic site, and that its visible terraces are historically significant. What remains debated is whether deeper layers contain real human construction from a much earlier age, or whether the most dramatic claims go beyond the available evidence. Number 8. Sumerian King List Prism. At the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, a clay prism known as the Sumerian King List records rulers, cities, and reign lengths from ancient Mesopotamia. The prism dates to around 1800 BC and begins with a distant age in which kings are said to have ruled for impossibly long periods before a great flood. It fascinates viewers because it feels like a preserved memory of an older world. Some see it as evidence that the roots of civilization stretch further back than conventional history admits. A more speculative theory treats the earliest section as literal history and argues that the text preserves a hidden chronology of a lost ancient civilization. The strongest scholarly view is more cautious. It holds that the list mixes myth, political messaging, and historical tradition rather than functioning as a modern record. As the text moves closer to better-known rulers, the reign lengths become more realistic, which suggests a blend of legend and fact. What is confirmed is that multiple versions of the king list survive, and that this prism is one of the best preserved examples. What remains uncertain is how much genuine memory may lie behind the earliest names, and whether the opening sections preserve distorted echoes of a much older past. Number 7. Vinca symbol system. Across Neolithic sites linked to the Vinca culture in the Balkans, archaeologists have found pottery and objects marked with small incised signs. These symbols became famous because some writers argued that they represent the earliest writing system in the world, potentially older than the first accepted scripts of Mesopotamia. If that were true, it would mean that symbolic communication and record keeping in prehistoric Europe were far more advanced than traditionally believed. Supporters of the proto-writing idea argue that repeated signs and patterns point to a structured system rather than random marks. Critics respond that the word writing is too strong, and that most archaeologists do not see convincing proof that the symbols recorded spoken language. Even some researchers who favor the idea of a sign system admit that damaged surfaces and isolated marks make firm conclusions difficult. What is confirmed is that the symbols are real, that they recur across sites, and that they belong to a surprisingly rich symbolic culture. What remains uncertain is whether the Vinca signs were true writing, religious symbols, ownership marks, or something in between that shows early complexity without yet becoming full script. Number 6. Nebra sky disk. Near Nebra in Germany, looters illegally uncovered a bronze disc in the summer of 1999. It was decorated with gold symbols of the sky. The Nebra sky disk drew intense attention because it is often described as the oldest known concrete representation of astronomical knowledge, with symbols linked to the sun, moon, stars, and horizon arcs. That made it important not only as an ancient artifact, but also as evidence that Bronze Age people may have possessed a more advanced understanding of the heavens than many assume. Some researchers later argued that the disk might actually belong to the Iron Age, which would reduce its importance as an early breakthrough in ancient astronomy. Others have suggested that, because the find was looted, the accepted story of its context should be treated carefully. The strongest evidence for the earlier date comes from studies linking the disk to its find spot and from associated objects dated to around 1600 BC. It is also confirmed that the disk is authentic and that it was modified in stages before burial. What remains debated is its exact purpose, whether it was a ritual object, an astronomical teaching tool, or both, and how far its design really reflects formal knowledge of the ancient sky. Number 5. Shari-Sukhte artificial eye. During excavations at Shari-Sukhte, also known as the Burnt City in Iran, archaeologists found a prosthetic eye placed in the left eye socket of a woman aged about 28 to 32 years. The object dates to between 2900 BC and 2832, which is why it is often described as the earliest known artificial eye. It drew attention because it suggests remarkable craftsmanship, personal identity, and perhaps even early medical or cosmetic practice in one of the ancient world's important urban centers. Some people interpret the find as evidence that advanced body modification and specialized knowledge developed much earlier than most people expect. A more cautious view is that the object may have carried ritual meaning as well as practical use, and that modern observers can overstate its medical significance. The strongest evidence for genuine use is that it was found in place, shaped to imitate the eye, and made with deliberate attention to visible detail. What is confirmed is that Shari Sukhte was a major Bronze Age settlement on important trade routes, and that the prosthetic eye is a real archaeological discovery. What remains uncertain is exactly how it was attached, how long it was worn, and what this extraordinary object reveals about status, beauty, and technical skill in the early ancient world. Number 4. Kirakitia Settlement. On Cyprus, the Neolithic settlement of Kirakitia preserves the remains of an early farming village with circular houses, walls, and organized domestic space. It attracts attention because it suggests that planned settlement, social cooperation, and stable community life existed far earlier than many people imagine when thinking about the origins of civilization. Some researchers see Kirakitia as evidence that sophisticated village planning and shared labor were already established in the ancient Mediterranean, long before cities appeared. That has led some viewers to argue that the roots of civilization began much earlier and more gradually than the traditional story of sudden urban emergence suggests. A more cautious interpretation is that orderly patterns in a settlement do not necessarily mean formal government or advanced state society. The strongest evidence comes from excavated houses, internal features, burials beneath floors, and repeated building practices across the site. What is confirmed is that Kirakitia was a real and substantial Neolithic settlement, occupied from the 7th to the 5th millennium BC. What remains uncertain is how social authority functioned there, how the settlement was organized in daily life, and whether places like this should be seen as early civilization or as a separate stage of complex culture before the rise of cities. Number 3. Blombos Cave Engravings. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists recovered a silkrete flake bearing a deliberate cross-hatched drawing made with red ochre. A study published in 2018 reported that the drawing comes from layers dated to around 73,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest known examples of intentional graphic expression. It gained major attention because it suggests that symbolic thought, abstract design, and complex behavior existed far earlier than the timelines people usually associate with advanced culture. Some have argued that such markings are too simple to count as meaningful evidence for a deep symbolic tradition and may only be casual marks. The strongest evidence says otherwise because microscopic and chemical analysis showed that the pigment was intentionally applied by human hand. The wider site also includes shell beads and engraved ochre pieces, making the drawing part of a broader pattern of symbolic behavior. What is confirmed is that early Homo sapiens were capable of abstract expression long before farming, cities, or written language. What remains uncertain is what the design meant, whether it carried shared cultural meaning, and how close such ancient symbolism comes to the mental foundations of later civilization. Number 2. Shigir Idol. In the Ural region of Russia, gold prospectors uncovered a carved wooden figure from a peat bog on January 24, 1890. It is now known as the Shigir Idol. Modern dating places the sculpture at roughly 11,500 years old, or possibly older, making it one of the oldest monumental wooden artworks ever found. It caused such interest because it suggests that hunter-gatherer societies at the end of the Ice Age were capable of large-scale symbolic art and complex shared belief. Some people see the idol as evidence that sophisticated spiritual culture developed much earlier than standard ideas about primitive pre-farming communities would suggest. Critics have questioned whether contamination or conservation methods could have distorted the dating, since such an early age has major implications for ancient history. Later research addressed those concerns and supported the early date with repeated testing and close analysis of the wood. What is confirmed is that the idol is real, that it once stood much taller, and that it belongs to a very early prehistoric world. What remains uncertain is what its carved faces and patterns meant, who made it, and whether it reflects a lost symbolic tradition far richer than historians once imagined. Number 1. Göbekli Tepe. In southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe contains monumental stone enclosures built by hunter-gatherers between 9600 BC and 8200 BC. It became one of the most important archaeological discoveries in the world because it suggests that organized ritual, symbolic culture, and large communal building projects existed before full farming society, that directly challenges the older idea that agriculture had to come first and that only settled farming communities could create monumental architecture. Some researchers describe the site as evidence that belief and ritual may have helped drive the rise of civilization rather than simply following it. More dramatic theories claim that Göbekli Tepe proves the existence of a lost advanced civilization whose role has been ignored or downplayed. The strongest evidence still supports an early Neolithic date based on radiocarbon testing, excavation results, carved pillars, animal imagery, and traces of intentional backfilling. What is confirmed is that the site is genuine, exceptionally early, and central to debates about the origins of civilization, religion, and social complexity. What remains uncertain is its exact purpose, how the builders organized themselves, and whether Göbekli Tepe represents the beginning of civilization as we know it. It may instead reflect a different path of ancient human complexity that history is only beginning to understand. Taken together, these ancient artifacts and archaeological discoveries show that the story of civilization may be older, deeper, and more complex than the traditional timeline suggests. Which entry did you find most interesting, and which ancient mystery do you think most challenges accepted? If you enjoyed this countdown on ancient civilizations, lost history, and forgotten discoveries, like the video, subscribe to ListLab, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to ListLab. Today we are counting down 10 vast Neolithic and prehistoric stone sites across the Middle East that raise one central question. Do these monuments point to a lost civilization linking these landscapes, or are we looking at different ancient communities solving similar problems in similar ways? On this channel, we explore mainstream archaeology and alternative theories in a balanced and fair way. If you enjoy that approach, subscribe and share your view in the comments. Number 10. Arabian Harat stone alignments. Across the black lava fields of Western Arabia, long lines of stone stretch over the landscape in shapes that often only make sense from the air. Some of these alignments run for kilometers, bending and looping in ways that suggest planning rather than chance. They attract attention because they seem too structured to be random, yet too low and too irregular to function as simple walls or barriers. Some alternative interpretations suggest these were territorial markers, ceremonial routes, or symbolic messages laid into the land itself. Others argue their importance has been underestimated because remote desert archaeology is difficult, expensive, and often incomplete. The strongest evidence shows these alignments sit alongside other prehistoric features such as cairns and hunting traps, forming part of a much wider cultural landscape. Field studies confirm they are human-made and often ancient, although not all were constructed in the same period. What is confirmed is that early communities reshaped these lava fields on a significant scale. What remains uncertain is whether these alignments serve practical, symbolic, or several overlapping purposes. Number 9. Negev Desert Enclosures. In the Negev Desert, low stone enclosures are scattered across ridges and near ancient water sources. At first glance, they look like simple pens, camps, or small compounds. They stand out because their distribution suggests organized activity in what seems like a harsh and sparsely occupied landscape. Some alternative theories propose these were ritual spaces or markers of an early desert society whose complexity has been underestimated. Others suggest they may have functioned as temporary centers for seasonal gatherings and exchange. The strongest evidence comes from excavation work indicating pastoral use, including signs of animal herding and short-term occupation. Nearby ritual sites and standing stones also point to a cultural dimension that goes beyond basic survival. What is confirmed is that mobile communities used these structures to organize life in the desert. What remains uncertain is whether they reflect one connected cultural system or several groups adapting independently through time. Number 8. Jabal al-Khashabieh Kite Complex. In southeastern Jordan, a dense concentration of desert kites creates one of the most striking prehistoric landscapes in the region. These structures use long stone walls to funnel animals into enclosed trapping areas. They drew major attention when carved stones were found that appear to show detailed layouts of the kites themselves. Some alternative interpretations suggest these carvings represent early mapping, planning, or shared design knowledge within a coordinated hunting society. Others argue the carvings may be symbolic representations rather than practical plans. The strongest evidence shows that these kites include features such as pit traps and match closely with the carved layouts. Archaeological dating places their use firmly in the Neolithic period. What is confirmed is that these were large-scale hunting systems that required cooperation, communication, and planning. What remains uncertain is how widely this knowledge was shared and whether it spread between regions or developed locally. Number 7. Stone wheels. Across parts of Jordan and Syria, circular stone formations known as wheels appear across the desert landscape. Many include spokes radiating from a central point, creating geometric designs best seen from above. They attract attention because they resemble large-scale patterns, similar to geoglyphs or planned symbolic landscapes. Some alternative theories suggest they had astronomical functions or may have worked as seasonal markers or calendars. Others propose they were symbolic structures linked to burial, memory, or social identity. The strongest evidence includes scientific dating that places some wheels in late prehistory, along with the presence of burial cairns in or near them. Their placement also suggests deliberate positioning within the wider landscape. What is confirmed is that these are human-made structures built with scale, planning, and intent. What remains uncertain is whether all wheels served the same purpose, or whether their meaning changed over time. Number 6. Saudi Arabian gates. In the lava fields of Harat Khaibar, hundreds of rectangular stone structures known as gates have been identified. From above, they appear as long barred shapes laid across the volcanic terrain. They gained attention largely through satellite imagery because their form is difficult to understand at ground level. Their purpose remains unclear, leading to alternative theories ranging from ritual spaces to territorial markers or root systems. Some suggest they are part of a larger organized pattern that has not yet been fully understood. The strongest evidence shows they belong to a broader family of prehistoric stone structures spread across Arabia. However, many have still not been excavated, which limits precise dating and interpretation. What is confirmed is that they are deliberate constructions distributed across a very wide area. What remains uncertain is their exact function and whether they represent one cultural tradition or several. Number 5. Kat Shebib Wall. The Kat Shebib is a long stone wall stretching across southern Jordan for many kilometers. It appears as a continuous boundary, yet in many places it is low, broken, and far from imposing. That has led to debate about its purpose, because it does not resemble a typical defensive wall. Some alternative interpretations suggest it marked a boundary between farming land and pastoral land. Others propose it may preserve the outline of a forgotten political, economic, or social division in the ancient landscape. The strongest evidence from aerial surveys and limited dating suggests it was built in sections over time rather than in a single effort. It also intersects with other structures, pointing to multiple phases of use and reuse. What is confirmed is that it is a large-scale human construction with deliberate placement. What remains uncertain is its exact age and whether it served defense, organization, symbolism, or a mix of all three. Number 4. Desert kites. Desert kites are vast prehistoric stone hunting structures found across the Middle East. They use long walls that converge into enclosed areas, creating systems designed to trap animals. They attracted attention because of their immense size and the level of coordination needed to build them. Some alternative theories suggest they point to a highly organized Neolithic society with shared knowledge stretching across regions. Others argue their effect on animal populations and human settlement patterns may have been greater than once believed. The strongest evidence comes from excavations revealing pit traps and associated tools. Rock art also appears to depict similar structures in active use. What is confirmed is that these were hunting systems used by prehistoric communities on a very large scale. What remains uncertain is how often they were used, who controlled them, and how widely the knowledge behind them spread. Number 3. Mustatils. Mustatils are long rectangular stone enclosures found in northwestern Saudi Arabia. They are often built in clusters and can reach remarkable sizes. They gained attention because their design does not match typical domestic buildings, settlements, or defensive structures. Some alternative interpretations suggest they formed part of a widespread ritual network extending across a much larger sacred landscape. Others propose their significance has only now come into focus because aerial archaeology has transformed what researchers can see. The strongest evidence comes from excavations showing animal remains and other ritual deposits. Their distribution also aligns with ancient environmental conditions that would have supported larger gatherings. What is confirmed is that they were intentionally built and used for ceremonial purposes. What remains uncertain is the full meaning of those rituals and how widespread or unified the practice really was. Number 2. Karahan Tepe and Taz Tepeler. In southeastern Turkey, Karahan Tepe is part of a wider group of Neolithic sites known as Tas Tepeler. These sites reveal multiple locations with large stone structures, carved features, and signs of organized activity. They attracted attention because they suggest monument building was not limited to one exceptional site. Some alternative theories propose a connected network of early societies sharing ideas, beliefs, and construction knowledge. Others suggest this may represent an early form of organized civilization before the later urban world. The strongest evidence shows repeated architectural styles and cultural patterns across several sites. Excavations also reveal signs of daily life existing alongside monumental construction. What is confirmed is that this region hosted complex Neolithic communities with shared traits. What remains uncertain is how closely these sites were linked and how much they influenced later societies. Number 1. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is a prehistoric site in southeastern Turkey featuring massive stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures. It is one of the earliest known examples of monumental architecture, dating to around the 10th millennium BC. It gained global attention because it challenges the idea that complex monuments only emerged after farming and settled life. Some alternative interpretations suggest it was built by an advanced lost civilization or functioned as an astronomical observatory. Others argue its true importance has been reshaped by modern assumptions about what early societies were capable of. The strongest evidence comes from detailed excavation and dating, showing multiple construction phases and deliberate burial. Nearby findings suggest food preparation and daily activity took place alongside ritual behavior. What is confirmed is that Göbekli Tepe marks a major shift in how early humans organized themselves. What remains uncertain is its exact purpose and what it ultimately reveals about the origins of civilization. These Neolithic and prehistoric structures suggest that early communities shaped the Middle East in ways we are still trying to understand. Which site stood out to you the most, and what do you think it reveals about our distant past? If you enjoyed this investigation, like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Welcome to ListLab. Today we are diving into 10 mysterious Anglo-Saxon and Viking artifacts that still raise huge questions about the early medieval world. These are objects linked to kings, warriors, graves, hoards, faith, power, and secrets that may have crossed the North Sea and beyond. What do these treasures really tell us about lost beliefs, hidden networks, and forgotten history? On this channel, we examine both mainstream archaeology and alternative ideas side by side in a fair and balanced way. So if you enjoy that approach, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Number 10. The Chesil Down Crystal Ball Pendant. This small but remarkable pendant is one of those artifacts that instantly feels mysterious. It is a carved rock crystal sphere set in metal, and it was found near Chesil Down on the Isle of Wight. It dates to around the 6th century AD, and it stands out because rock crystal was rare in Anglo-Saxon graves, which means this was almost certainly a prized and unusual possession. That alone raises an exciting question. Why was this object considered important enough to be buried with the dead? The mystery deepens because crystal has long been linked in later folklore and popular imagination with vision, power, protection, and ritual meaning. Some people have wondered whether this pendant had a religious meaning, a magical meaning, or some symbolic role understood by the people who buried it. There is no direct evidence proving any of those ideas, but the fact that such an unusual object was chosen for burial keeps the speculation alive and makes it one of the most intriguing early Anglo-Saxon finds. Scientific study supports the idea that the crystal itself is genuine early medieval material, and some specialists believe it may even have been reused from an older Roman object. That possibility gives it another layer of mystery, because it may already have been ancient when it entered the grave. We know it was carefully placed with the dead, and that tells us it mattered. What we still do not know is why it mattered so much. Was it a sign of status, a treasured heirloom, a protective charm, or something more spiritual? That unanswered question is exactly what makes this artifact so compelling. Number 9. The Galloway Hoard Rock Crystal Jar. Few finds capture the feeling of a hidden medieval secret quite like the Galloway Hoard. Among the treasures discovered in 2014 was a finely carved rock crystal jar fitted with extraordinary gold filigree. The vessel itself is far older than the 9th century burial context and appears to have begun life as a classical object before being reused and transformed centuries later. That alone is enough to make it remarkable, but the real mystery begins with the inscription. The gold base carries a Latin inscription naming Bishop Higwold. That is astonishing because no clearly known bishop by that exact name appears in the surviving historical record. Suddenly, this is not just a beautiful object. It becomes a puzzle connected to a missing figure from the past. Was Higwold a local bishop whose memory vanished from written history? Was the name read slightly differently in another tradition? Or does this object preserve the only surviving trace of a forgotten church leader? Mainstream researchers usually interpret the jar as an elite Christian possession, and some have suggested it may have functioned as a reliquary or sacred container. That makes sense, given the inscription and the quality of the workmanship, but it also makes the burial more dramatic. Why would a rare ancient crystal vessel linked to a Christian figure end up hidden in a hoard? Was it concealed during a time of danger? Was it taken as loot in conflict? Was it being moved across regions when something went wrong? What is confirmed is that the jar was part of the hoard, and that specialists support the inscription as genuine. What remains unresolved is the identity of Higwold, and the exact journey this object took before it disappeared into the ground. It is one of those artifacts that feels less like a museum piece, and more like a surviving clue from a lost chapter of Viking Age Britain. Number 8. The Folded Gold Cross from the Staffordshire Hoard. The Staffordshire Hoard is already one of the most dramatic Anglo-Saxon discoveries ever made, Found in 2009, it contained an astonishing concentration of elite military metalwork from the 7th century. Sword fittings, helmet fragments, warrior gear, and pieces linked to power and conflict dominated the collection. Yet hidden among all that martial splendor was something that feels very different and very haunting. A gold cross that had been crushed and folded. That single object has become one of the biggest mysteries in the entire hoard. Why was a Christian cross bent out of shape and buried among war gear? Was it ripped from a church during violence? Was it deliberately damaged by an enemy? Or was it folded for practical reasons, to hide it, carry it, or fit it into the deposit? Each explanation creates a very different story, and none of them can be proved with certainty. Some researchers view the hoard as war booty, gathered after battle, perhaps stripped from defeated elites and religious sites alike. Others think some of the material may have been selected and buried as part of a more symbolic act, possibly an offering of spoils. The cross sits right at the center of that debate because it feels both sacred and damaged. It forces us to ask whether we are looking at looting, devotion, fear, or ritual. The strongest evidence comes from the hoard itself. The dating fits the mid-7th century, and the workmanship matches elite Mercia metalwork. The cross is real, and its distorted form is not imagined. What remains uncertain is the reason for that distortion, and the identity of the people who chose to bury it. This is the kind of object that turns a treasure hoard into a genuine historical mystery, because it hints at beliefs, conflict, and symbolism that remain just out of reach. Number 7. The Fuller Brooch. The Fuller Brooch is one of the most extraordinary objects to survive from Anglo-Saxon England, and it still feels almost too sophisticated to be real. This large circular silver brooch, decorated with black niello inlay, presents personifications of the 5 senses in a design unlike anything else from the period. When it appeared in a London antique shop in the early 1900s, scholars were stunned. Some were so surprised by its refinement and unusual imagery that one curator even dismissed it as a modern fake. That reaction only added to the mystique. An artifact so beautiful and so intellectually ambitious seemed to challenge expectations of what Anglo-Saxon metalwork could be. But careful metallurgical analysis showed the silver and yellow were genuinely medieval. The brooch was authentic. Far from being a forgery, it turned out to be a rare glimpse into a world of elite craftsmanship, symbolism, and learning. Researchers often connect the brooch with the cultural revival associated with the court of Alfred the Great. Its imagery feels thoughtful, deliberate, and learned. This was not simply jewelry. It was almost certainly an object made for someone of high rank, with access to artistic and intellectual circles. That raises the mystery even further. Who commissioned it? Who wore it? And how did such an extraordinary masterpiece end up lost to history before resurfacing by chance centuries later? The confirmed facts are impressive enough. It is genuine Anglo-Saxon craftsmanship, probably made in Wessex around 880 AD, and it remains one of the finest examples of late Anglo-Saxon art. But the unanswered questions are what make it unforgettable. Its exact origin, its first owner, and the deeper meaning behind its design remain partly hidden. The Fuller brooch is not just a beautiful survival. It is a reminder that the Anglo-Saxon world may have been even richer, more intellectual, and more symbolically complex than many people imagine. Number 6. The Lewes chessmen. The Lewes chessmen are among the most famous medieval artifacts ever found in Britain, and they have lost none of their power to fascinate. Discovered in 1831 on the Isle of Lewis, these wonderfully expressive ivory figures seem to stare straight back across the centuries. Their faces, their thrones, and their carved details are unforgettable. But behind their fame lies a mystery that is still not fully solved. Most experts believe the chessmen were made in Trondheim, in Norway, during the late 12th century, and that their style fits the wider world of Norse craftsmanship. Analysis of the ivory points to walrus tusk from the North Atlantic trade network, probably linked to Greenland through Norway. That evidence is strong, and it explains why the mainstream view remains dominant. Yet the central mystery is not only where they were made, it is why they were buried in the Hebrides at all. Were they part of a merchant cargo heading across the sea? Were they owned by a wealthy noble or church figure? Were they hidden during danger and never recovered? Those questions have inspired endless discussion because the chessmen feel like a frozen moment in motion. They were clearly meant to be used, displayed, or traded. Instead, they vanished into the earth. Alternative suggestions, including Icelandic origins, have appeared from time to time, and while they have not displaced the Norwegian theory, they show how compelling the puzzle remains. What is confirmed is their date, their material, and their strong Norse connection. What remains open is the exact workshop, and the exact story of how such remarkable pieces came to be buried on Lewis. More than almost any other medieval artifact, they capture that perfect blend of artistry, fame, and unanswered mystery. Number 5. The Sutton Hoo Whetstone Scepter. Sutton Hoo is one of the great archaeological discoveries of Europe, and within that extraordinary ship burial, one object still stands apart as deeply enigmatic. It is often described as a whetstone scepter, because it looks both practical and ceremonial at the same time, carved from fine stone with tapering ends, red colouring, and a tiny stag figure on top. It hardly resembles an ordinary tool. Instead, it feels like an object of authority, ritual, and hidden meaning. That ambiguity is exactly why it has fascinated researchers for so long. Was it a genuine scepter or staff of office, used by a king or high-ranking leader? Was it symbolic only, with no practical function at all? Or could it have carried some ritual role that combined sharpening, power, and kingship in a way we no longer fully understand? Its shape has even prompted comparisons with late Roman ceremonial staffs, which hints at deeper links between post-Roman Britain and emerging Anglo-Saxon rule. The evidence is tantalizing. There is no obvious sign that it was regularly used as a sharpening stone, and the carved faces and stag make it clear that symbolism mattered. The object appears to have been made to impress, and perhaps to communicate rank, identity, or sacred authority. In a burial often linked with King Raedwald, that possibility becomes even more dramatic. If this was a royal insignia, then it may have been held at moments of command, ceremony, or oath-taking before being placed in one of the most famous graves in British history. What we can say with confidence is that it was carefully made, buried with elite grave goods, and treated as something important. What we cannot say is exactly what it meant to the people of its time. That uncertainty keeps it alive as one of the greatest mysteries of Sutton Hoo, and one of the strongest symbols of how much early medieval kingship is still hidden from us. Number 4. The Franks Casket. The Franks casket is small enough to fit in the hands, yet complex enough to occupy scholars for generations. Made from whalebone in the early 8th century, it is covered with scenes, inscriptions, and symbols that seem to pull from multiple worlds at once. Christian stories appear beside heroic legends and older traditions, creating a dense visual puzzle that still resists full interpretation. This is not just an artifact, it is almost a coded message from Anglo-Saxon England. One panel shows the adoration of the Magi. Others seem to depict figures such as Wayland the Smith, and perhaps scenes tied to Germanic legend or early historical memory. That combination is what makes the casket so powerful and so mysterious. Why bring Christian and pagan or heroic imagery together on one object? Was it designed as an intellectual challenge for an elite audience? Was it meant to teach moral lessons through layered storytelling? Or was it a prestige item celebrating a learned owner who moved comfortably between inherited tradition and Christian belief? The inscriptions are genuine Old English runes, and they give the casket enormous historical value. But they do not solve every puzzle. In fact, they deepen it, because parts of the imagery remain contested. Even now, experts debate the precise meaning of some scenes, and whether every panel was intended to form part of a single coherent plan. That is why the Franks casket continues to attract attention from historians, archaeologists, art historians, and anyone interested in the secretive, symbolic world of the early Middle Ages. What is confirmed is that it dates to around 700 AD and is likely Northumbrian in origin. What remains uncertain is the full message encoded in its carvings. The Franks casket feels like evidence that the Anglo-Saxon world was not only violent and political, but also highly intellectual, layered, and full of symbolic experiments that we are still trying to decode today. Number 3. The Curedale Hoard. The Curedale Hoard is one of those discoveries that seems almost too large to be real. Found in 1840 near the River Ribble in northwest England, it contained more than 8,600 items, including coins, ingots, and jewelry from different regions. It is one of the largest Viking Age silver hoards ever discovered, and its sheer scale immediately suggests a story of major movement, crisis, ambition, or war. This was not someone hiding a few valuables. This was treasure on a historic scale. The leading theory places the burial around 903 AD to 910 AD, during a turbulent period after Vikings were driven from Dublin. That has led many researchers to suggest the hoard may have been a war chest belonging to Irish Norse exiles preparing for future campaigns. It is an exciting theory because it turns the hoard into a snapshot of displaced power waiting for a comeback. Suddenly, the silver is not just wealth. It becomes strategy, survival, and unfinished conflict. But not everyone agrees. An alternative proposal suggested that the hoard might instead reflect a donation by Frankish Christians to believers in the Danelaw. That idea remains less widely accepted, but it shows how unusual and open the evidence can be. The mix of coins and bullion leaves room for debate, and that is what keeps the mystery alive. Was this military wealth, sacred wealth, trade wealth, or a combination of all three? The strongest evidence comes from the coin dates and the strong Norse character of the bullion. We can be fairly confident about the deposit date, the location, and the broad cultural links involved. What remains uncertain is the identity of the people who buried it, and their reason for never returning. That missing final act turns the Curedale hoard from an impressive find into one of the great unresolved Viking mysteries of Britain. Number 2. The Ormside Bowl. The Ormside Bowl is one of the most elegant survivors of Anglo-Saxon metalwork, and yet its story is full of uncertainty. Crafted in gilded silver around the mid-8th century, it is a double bowl of exceptional quality, decorated in a style that suggests a Northumbrian workshop working for an elite patron. It is beautiful enough on its own, but what makes it truly compelling is the sense that it lived a long, complicated life before finally disappearing into the ground. The bowl appears to have been adapted into a drinking cup and repaired with silver patches, which shows it was valued and reused rather than discarded. That already tells us it passed through caring hands over time, but where those hands belonged and how the bowl ended up buried are still open questions. Because it was found near a location later linked to a Viking burial, some have wondered whether it was connected to that grave or even taken as loot in a raid. Others have argued the bowl was actually found inside a church, which would suggest a very different path. That debate matters, because each explanation changes the whole meaning of the object. If it was buried with a warrior, then it may reflect plunder, prestige, and movement across a violent frontier. If it was hidden in a church, then it may speak to crisis, fear, and an attempt to protect sacred treasure during troubled times. Either way, the bowl seems to sit at the crossroads of faith, wealth, and instability in the Viking Age North. What is confirmed is that it is high-quality Anglo-Saxon work, dating to the late 8th century, and that it survived intact into modern times. What remains mysterious are the circumstances of its burial, concealment, or loss. The Ormside Bowl is a perfect example of an artifact whose beauty is matched by the uncertainty of its journey, and that uncertainty is what makes it so memorable. Number 1. Ulfberht swords. Few medieval artifacts have inspired as much fascination as the Ulfberht swords. These blades, bearing the inscription Ulfberht, have been found across northern Europe and date broadly from the 9th to the 11th centuries. At first glance, they are impressive weapons, but the deeper researchers looked, the stranger the story became. Some Ulfberht blades appear to have been made from exceptionally high-quality steel that seems far ahead of what many people expect from early medieval Europe. That discovery transformed them from famous swords into a genuine technological mystery. The inscription itself raises immediate questions. Was Ulfberht a master smith? Was it a workshop name? Was it a prestige mark copied by rivals and imitators? Because not all swords with the inscription are equal, the mystery only deepens. Some examples are superior, while others appear lower grade, suggesting that the name carried enough status for others to imitate it. That makes the true Ulfberht blades even more intriguing, because they may represent a highly controlled tradition of elite sword making hidden among copies. Mainstream scholarship usually links the name to a Frankish origin in the Carolingian world, and that interpretation makes sense. But the metallurgical quality of some blades has led to bigger questions about trade, knowledge, and technology transfer. How did smiths of this era obtain or produce such high-grade steel? Did knowledge travel westward from crucible steel traditions further east? Were these swords connected to long-distance exchange networks that reached far beyond the Viking world? What is confirmed is that the swords were made between around 800 AD and 1100 AD, and that the best examples are truly impressive in metallurgical terms. What remains debated is who produced the finest blades and exactly how they achieved that level of quality. The Ulfberht sword is the perfect number 1 because it combines warfare, status, craftsmanship, and a real unresolved question about early medieval technology. Even now, it feels like a blade out of time. These 10 mysterious Anglo-Saxon and Viking artifacts remind us just how much of early medieval history is still hidden from view. From royal burials and sacred objects to lost treasure and advanced weapons, each one offers real evidence, but also leaves behind unanswered questions that continue to fuel debate. Which of these artifacts do you think hides the biggest mystery, and which one should we cover in a full episode next? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into Viking mysteries, Anglo-Saxon treasures, and ancient historical secrets, please like, subscribe, and join us for more balanced explorations of the past. Welcome to ListLab. Today we are counting down 10 mysterious ancient discoveries that some believe were hidden, discouraged, or quietly kept from view. Were these finds truly suppressed? Or are there more grounded reasons they were restricted, reburied, or debated? If you are new to the channel, then subscribe for more calm investigative histories, and let me know in the comments which discovery you think raises the biggest questions. Number 10. The stone they buried again. The Cochno Enigma. In Western Bartonshire in Scotland, the Cochno stone is a vast prehistoric rock panel carved with intricate cup and ring markings, first recorded in the 1800s. Its swirling patterns stretch across the rock in a way that feels deliberate and almost coded, inviting interpretation. In 1965, After documentation and study, the stone was deliberately reburied. That decision is what drives the modern suspicion that something significant was concealed. Some argue the carvings form a prehistoric star map or encode advanced astronomical knowledge that challenges accepted narratives of Neolithic society. Others suggest it points to a lost civilization whose understanding of the heavens has been minimized. The strongest grounded explanation is preservation, as the site sits close to housing and suffered from vandalism and graffiti. Cup and ring art is found widely across Neolithic Britain, and no verified astronomical alignment has been confirmed by peer-reviewed study. What remains uncertain is the original purpose of the carvings, because their meaning has not been definitively decoded. Number 9. The Alien Faces of Sangsingdui Bronze Age Outliers. In 1986, archaeologists in Sichuan province in China uncovered sacrificial pits filled with bronze masks and statues, unlike most early Chinese artifacts. The faces, with protruding eyes and sharp angular features, appeared so distinct that they seemed to challenge established historical expectations. For some observers, the unusual style suggested that the discovery was not fully integrated into mainstream narratives for years. Alternative theories claim the masks depict non-human beings or remnants of a forgotten advanced civilization. Others argue the site forces a rewriting of early Chinese origins that institutions were slow to accept. Archaeological evidence links Sangsingdui to the ancient Shu kingdom and demonstrates strong regional diversity within the Bronze Age. The metallurgical techniques align with known capabilities of the period, rather than unexplained technology. What remains debated is the precise symbolic meaning of the masks and why the artifacts were intentionally broken and buried. Number 8. The concrete that refuses to crack, Rome's forgotten formula. Ancient Roman structures continue to endure harsh environments, and their concrete often outlasts many modern materials. This resilience has led to the idea that the true Roman recipe was somehow lost or deliberately obscured. Some suggest modern industry suppresses knowledge of superior ancient chemistry to protect economic interests. The narrative of a forgotten formula implies that the ancient world mastered techniques beyond our own. Recent scientific research shows that lime clasts within Roman concrete can react with water and help seal cracks as they form. This self-healing behavior appears linked to mixing methods rather than mysterious ingredients. After the fall of Rome, construction traditions shifted, and durability was not always the primary goal. What remains under investigation is how consistently these methods were applied and how effectively they can be reproduced today. Number 7. The reptile gods of Ubaid, symbols, or something more. In Mesopotamia, archaeologists have uncovered 7,000-year-old clay figurines from the Ubaid period that display elongated heads and reptile-like features. Their unusual appearance immediately provokes speculation about what they represent. Some claim these figures depict literal reptilian beings or non-human rulers who influenced early civilization. The suppression narrative argues such imagery is rarely highlighted because it complicates familiar origin stories. These figurines are frequently referenced in ancient alien discussions as evidence of something beyond humanity. Archaeological interpretation places them within ritual and symbolic traditions common in prehistoric art. Stylized features may reflect masks, spiritual identity, or artistic convention, rather than biology. What remains uncertain is the precise meaning the makers intended, because no written explanation survives from that period. Number 6. The Forbidden Chambers of Assalini, Malta's silent underground. Beneath the town of Paola in Malta lies the hypogeum of Fai al-Saflieni, a subterranean Neolithic complex dated to around 4000 BC. Its carved chambers descend through multiple levels, creating an environment that feels intentional and ceremonial. Public access is tightly restricted, and that limitation has encouraged claims that important areas are concealed. Some argue the structure functioned as an energy chamber designed for acoustic or spiritual effects. Others suggest hidden rooms exist but remain sealed from public knowledge. Official explanations emphasize conservation, as the microclimate of the site is delicate and easily disrupted. Acoustic studies confirm interesting resonance effects, but do not demonstrate advanced hidden technology. What remains debated is how intentionally sound and architectural design were combined by its builders. Number 5. Europe before Sumer, the Tartaria tablets debate. In 1961, 3 clay tablets bearing incised symbols were reported from the site of Tășăria in Romania. Some researchers place their context around 5300 BC, raising the possibility that they predate the earliest writing in Mesopotamia. This dating fuels the claim that European civilization developed writing earlier than traditionally accepted. Online narratives expand this into stories of an advanced Old Europe civilization or exaggerated Tartarian empires. The suppression angle suggests institutions would resist altering the established origin story of literacy. Scholars debate the discovery context and question whether the symbols represent writing at all. The markings may instead reflect ritual signs or ownership indicators. What remains uncertain is whether the tablets encode language, leaving the earliest writing question unresolved. Number 4. The fire from the sky at Abu Huraira, echoes of 10,800 BC. At the site of Abu Huraira in Syria, researchers have identified material showing evidence of extreme heat dating to around 10,800 BC. The presence of melt glass suggests exposure to temperatures higher than typical settlement fires. Supporters of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis argue that a cosmic airburst or impact event triggered sudden environmental change. Some extend this theory into claims of a lost Ice Age civilization destroyed in a global catastrophe. The suppression narrative claims such evidence would force a dramatic rewrite of early human history. Critics note that the impact hypothesis remains debated and that replication of findings across sites is inconsistent. There is no confirmed evidence of an advanced civilization erased at that time. What remains uncertain is whether the melt layers reflect a regional event or part of a wider global phenomenon. Number 3. The faces that should not exist, the Olmec colossal heads. Along the Gulf Coast of Mexico, colossal basalt heads carved around 900 BC stand as monumental achievements of the Olmec civilization. Their scale and individuality demonstrate remarkable organization and artistic skill. In earlier scholarship, Mesoamerican societies were sometimes underestimated, which opened space for alternative explanations. Some fringe narratives claim the heads depict foreign visitors from across the ocean and suggest suppressed evidence of transoceanic contact. These claims often connect to broader diffusion theories lacking archaeological support. Excavation context shows the heads belong firmly within indigenous Olmec development. Quarrying and transport methods align with regional capabilities and social structure. What remains uncertain is the identity of the individuals portrayed and the specific symbolism of their headdresses. Number 2. The City Beneath the Earth, Derinkuyu Underground. In central Turkey, the underground city of Derinkuyu extends through multiple levels carved into soft volcanic rock. It was capable of sheltering thousands, complete with ventilation shafts and defensible entrances. The scale invites speculation about what danger required such an extensive refuge. Some propose it was protection from ancient nuclear warfare or a forgotten global catastrophe. Others connect it to myths of hidden subterranean civilizations. Archaeological interpretation links it to protection during invasions and periods of instability. The geology of Cappadocia makes excavation practical, and similar underground settlements exist in the region. What remains uncertain is the full construction timeline and the maximum population it once sustained. Number 1. The hidden void beneath the pyramids, Secrets of Giza. Beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt, modern scanning technologies have detected subsurface anomalies and voids. Reports of unexplored spaces beneath or near the Great Pyramid reignite one of history's most persistent mysteries. The most famous alternative theory is the Hall of Records, a legendary archive said to contain lost knowledge of an advanced civilization. Some claim excavation is suppressed to prevent a revolutionary discovery. Geophysical surveys show that anomalies can represent natural cavities, structural voids, or ordinary architectural features. Excavation at Giza is tightly regulated to preserve fragile monuments and protect cultural heritage. No verified discovery of hidden archives or lost libraries has been confirmed. What remains uncertain is the precise nature of certain detected voids, which require careful study before firm conclusions can be drawn. These discoveries show how easily mystery grows when evidence is incomplete or access is restricted. Each case balances imagination with documented research. Which entry did you find most compelling? If you enjoyed this investigation, like the video, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.